Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. The desert has always been my sanctuary. There's something about the endless expanse of sand and scrub, the way the moonlight paints the rocks silver, that clears my head like nothing else. That's why I took Bailey with me that night. A quick hike to shake off the stress of the week. Bailey was my shadow, a loyal shepherd mixed with more courage than I'd ever have. Her tail wagged with excitement as we started up the trail, the soft crunch of gravel underfoot and the occasional rustle of a lizard darting through the brush. The wind hummed low and steady through the canyon, and I thought, this is peace. But peace is a way of turning on you. About a mile in, Bailey stopped dead. Her ears went rigid, her body stiff. She let out a low growl that I'd only ever heard when a stranger came too close to the house. "What is it, girl?" I whispered, scanning the trail ahead. Then I heard it, a howl, long and low, echoing through the canyon walls. It wasn't a coyote or a wolf. I'd heard plenty of those before. No, this was something else, something wrong. The pitch wavered like a tape recording played at the wrong speed, and it raised the hairs on my arms. Bailey barked, straining at her leash, pulling toward the edge of the trail. I tightened my grip, my heart thudding in my chest. That's when I saw it. At first, it was just movement, shadows against shadows down in the canyon below. But as the figure climbed, faster than anything should be able to climb, the moonlight caught it. It was humanoid, but not human. Its limbs were too long, its joints bending in ways they shouldn't. The skin stretched over its bones was pale and tight, like dried leather, and its eyes, yellow and glowing, locked onto mine. Bailey went wild, barking and snarling, but then she yelped. Her leash went slack. "Bailey!" I turned, but she was gone. The leash lay limp on the ground, torn as if cut by something sharp. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself to look back at the trail's edge. The figure was standing there now, taller than I'd thought, its head cocked to the side like it was curious. And then it smiled. Its mouth stretched impossibly wide, revealing teeth that were jagged and uneven, like shards of broken glass. Then it spoke, in my voice. "Bailey's gone. You're next." I can't explain the kind of terror that grips you when something unnatural mocks you that way. I didn't think, I just ran. My boots slipped on loose gravel, and my lungs burned as I tore down the trail. The howling followed me, louder now, closer. I could feel it gaining, could almost feel its breath on the back of my neck. By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the key into the ignition. I floored it, the tires kicking up a spray of dust as I sped down the dirt road. I never found Bailey. I put up flyers, combed the area for days, but she was just gone. Now, when the wind howls through the canyon at night, I swear I hear her bark. But it's not just her. There's something else too. A low, guttural growl that sounds like it's trying to mimic her, but failing. I don't go hiking anymore, and I never, ever open the window when I hear that howl. Story 2. Growing up on a farm in rural Arizona, you get used to odd things. Coyotes howling in the distance, shadows playing tricks on you under the big, empty sky, and the occasional chill that comes out of nowhere, even on the hottest summer days. But none of that prepared me for the night. I stayed in the barn alone. My dad asked me to keep an eye on Daisy, our mare, who was due to foal any day. Daisy was a sweetheart, but when she was pregnant, she got skittish, and Dad didn't want to leave her alone. I didn't mind. The barn was my favorite place, a fortress of creaking wood and the smell of hay. It was warm, familiar, and safe. At least I thought it was. I set up a cot in the corner, brought a flashlight, a book, and a thermos of coffee. Daisy was calm, chewing on her feed, her big brown eyes watching me like she always did. The night was quiet except for the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees. Then I heard it, scratching. At first, I thought it was mice in the hay, which wasn't unusual. I glanced at Daisy, but her ears were perked up, her body stiff. She heard it too. I grabbed the flashlight and swept the beam across the barn. Nothing, just hay bales and shadows. The scratching came again, louder this time, and from the barn door. It wasn't a random scuttle like mice or raccoons. It was deliberate, rhythmic like fingernails on wood. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking more than I wanted. The barn door creaked open. Slowly, I froze. I'd locked that door. I was sure of it. The beam of my flashlight landed on the doorway, and there was a figure standing just inside. At first glance, it looked like a man, but as it stepped forward, the details didn't make sense. Its arms were too long, hanging almost to its knees. Its posture was hunched, like it wasn't used to standing upright. "Who's there?" I tried to sound brave, but my voice cracked. The figure stepped closer, and the light caught its face, if you could even call it a face. Its skin was gray and stretched tight, like leather left in the sun too long. Its eyes were black, deep, endless pits that seemed to suck the light out of the room. Then it smiled. I'll never forget that smile. Teeth jagged and yellow, too many of them for a human mouth. And it spoke. "You shouldn't be here," it rasped, its voice like dry leaves scraping against each other. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stumbled back, knocking over a bucket. Daisy screamed, a high-pitched, terrified sound I'd never heard from her before. She reared up, slamming against the stall, her eyes wild with fear. The creature turned its head toward her, and for a moment, I thought it was going to climb into her stall. Instead, it crouched, its limbs bending in ways that made my stomach churn, and it mimicked her scream. Perfectly. That's when it started crawling toward me, fast and jerky, like a spider learning how to walk. I didn't think. I just ran. The flashlight flickered as I swung it around, the beam bouncing off the walls. I tripped over the threshold of the barn, scrambled to my feet, and bolted for the house. My dad was in the living room, cleaning his rifle, when I burst through the door, breathless and shaking. "There's something in the barn," I gasped. He didn't ask questions, just grabbed the rifle and marched outside. I followed, clutching his arm like a kid. When we reached the barn, it was silent, too silent. Even Daisy was calm, standing in her stall like nothing had happened. The door was shut, the lock secure. No footprints in the dirt, no sign of anything unusual. Probably a coyote, Dad said, though he didn't sound convinced. He patted my shoulder and told me to get some sleep. But I didn't sleep that night, or the next, because I know what I saw. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I hear that voice outside my window, whispering, "You shouldn't be here." Story 3. When I moved into the cabin on the Navajo reservation, I wasn't looking for adventure. I was looking for quiet, solitude, a chance to start over after the chaos of my divorce. The cabin was small, nestled in the shadow of red cliffs, with a wraparound porch and a view of endless desert. It felt like the kind of place where nothing could go wrong. I'd heard the stories about skinwalkers, of course. Who hasn't? They're woven into the air out here like the dust and the wind. But I respected the culture and the warnings. The Navajo people were kind to me, even if they were a little wary of outsiders. I followed their advice. Keep the windows shut, the doors locked, and don't wander at night. For a while, everything was fine, peaceful, until that night. It started with the sound of footsteps, crunching in the gravel outside. It was subtle at first, almost like an echo, but enough to make me mute the TV and tilt my head. The sound stopped as soon as I did. I sat there for a moment, my heart beating just a little too fast. The cabin was miles from the nearest neighbor, but maybe it was an animal, a coyote, or a stray dog. I grabbed my flashlight and walked to the window. The blinds rattled slightly as I peeked through them, the beam of the flashlight slicing through the darkness. Nothing, just the empty expanse of desert, bathed in silver light from the full moon. I let out a breath and shook my head, laughing at myself. My nerves were getting the better of me, but as I turned back toward the couch, I saw it. The face. It was at the window, pressed against the glass like it had been waiting for me to look. Pale, almost translucent, with hollow cheeks and eyes too large for its skull. Its mouth stretched into a jagged grin, and its teeth, God, its teeth looked like shards of broken glass. My legs locked, my breath hitched. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't think. Then it whispered my name, not screamed, not growled, whispered. Soft, almost tender, like a lover calling from across the room. Hearing it made my stomach turn to ice. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the coffee table, and grabbed my phone with shaking hands. I called the only person I could think of, my friend Jake, who lived about 10 minutes away. "Jake," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's something outside my cabin." "What do you mean, something?" It's looking at me through the window." Silence on the other end. Then Jake said, "Stay on the line. I'm coming." I heard the roar of his truck starting up, and relief flooded me for a split second, until I heard the footsteps again. This time, they weren't outside. They were on the roof. It moved slowly, deliberately, the sound of gravel crunching replaced by the creak of old wood. My heart pounded so hard it felt like my ribs might crack. "Jake, it's on the roof. Stay calm," he said, but his voice wasn't calm. "I'm almost there." The footsteps stopped above me, and I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. Then the scratching started. It came from the front door, slow and deliberate, like nails dragging across wood. I clenched the phone so hard my knuckles turned white, backing into the farthest corner of the room. "It's trying to get in," I whispered. "Don't let it," Jake said, his voice sharp. Whatever you do, don't open that door. The scratching stopped. Silence stretched, thick and heavy, until I thought the pounding of my heart would give me away. Then came the voice. "Let me in," it said, still whispering. "Please, I'm cold." It was my voice. I froze, my mind reeling. How could it sound like me? How could it know? Headlights flooded the front yard, and the sound of Jake's truck barreling up the driveway made the thing go quiet. When he burst through the door, shotgun in hand, I expected chaos. But there was nothing. No face at the window. No footsteps on the roof. No scratches on the door. Jake and I searched the property, but there were no tracks, no signs of anything out of the ordinary. Still, I knew what I saw. It's been weeks now, and I haven't seen it again. But every night, I feel it, watching me. And sometimes, when the wind dies down and the desert is quiet, I hear it whisper my name.